I grew up here in East Tennessee and went to college in upstate New York in the Hudson Valley. And so I was 18 years old, was the first time that I went to New York City. It was absolutely chaotic. To say that it was a culture shock feels like a massive understatement to me. I mean, I was absolutely, totally, unbelievably anxious just about being there. There were so many people and so many cars and so much noise and so many neon signs and so many people asking me for things like money or directions and so many people trying to give me things like food or just the bizarreness that you sometimes get in Manhattan. It was just absolutely chaotic. It was so bad, people didn't even wave from their cars when you drove by. No one stopped to talk at you. People don't make eye contact in the city. Everyone's just looking down and going straight ahead. It was so bad. There was one lady who ran over my foot with a baby stroller one time, and she did not even say anything. She didn't apologize. She didn't look back, completely unfazed, just kept going forward. And I'm pretty sure that her infant child heckled me as they went by. I don't know. It was absolutely crazy. Now, in a lot of ways, that's because New York City is the cultural capital of the world. And you get people from all over the world who come to this city and are influenced by the trends and the fashions and the ideas that are shaped here, just the confluence of cultures in this place. So it makes for an interesting dynamic. Now, what New York City is to our world, Rome was to the ancient first century world that the church was born in and grew in. And I think it's worth us taking some time to think about that today as we wrap up this time together talking about the church and the role of the Holy Spirit and what all that means for our lives as followers of Jesus. So Steve here at Kendricks Creek, and it's a joy to be with you again. And I want us to look a little more specifically at the church in Rome. What is it? What was going on there? Where did it come from? And why does it matter today? Perhaps it shouldn't surprise us that of all the letters in the New Testament the Apostle Paul wrote, of all the different books of the Bible, there's perhaps none that was more influential to Western civilization than the book of Romans. I mean, you have people from the earliest centuries on up through today that it deeply, deeply influenced. And I mean, the way that it shaped things like theology and even like civil law and our thinking on the civic institutions in the world, I mean, it's deeply influential. I mean, it covers a broad variety of topics. At its core, though, it gets this idea of what is the gospel? What does it mean for our lives? How do we live in relationship with Jesus, following his Spirit? And then how do we live in relationship with one another? I mean, it uses a number of different devices to cover this, from history and theology and exploring and expositing on the ancient Hebrew scriptures to things like natural law. We get a broad variety of topics covered in the letter to the Romans. But one of the things recently that I came across in this book by Andy Crouch called The Life We're Looking For, he points to something that I'd often overlooked in Romans. I mean, when I go through my Bible and I look at the different letters the Apostle Paul writes, these various churches, one of the things that I tend to just kind of gloss over are the names. It starts at the beginning, and usually he's got them at the end. It's like greetings and introductions at the beginning, and then more greetings and gratitude lists kind of at the end of these letters. And at the end of Romans 16, we have this long list that the Apostle Paul gives us of all these different people. I mean, there's at least 5 different households that are represented, 7 different women that he lauds and points to as great sterling examples of Christian faith and life and service. Over 16 people total that he points out and says, greet these people. We have to keep in mind, this is kind of that Christianity was not what we think of it today. I mean, this is a fledgling Jewish sect that was beginning to incorporate Gentiles into this movement by the time that Apostle Paul writes this in the mid-50s AD, that was barely a blip on the Roman radar. And yet somehow, over the course of generations, this movement would conquer the Roman Empire. This little collection of various house churches in Rome would grow to become, the dominant religious and thought worldview in the world in just a few hundred years. I mean, that is remarkable. And, there's a lot of reasons we could maybe theorize as to why that is or how that happened or what made the difference. But I think part of why this really matters, and the reason that I want us to look at it and just to think about it today, is just to summarize some of what we've talked about. So I'd encourage you to look at Romans 16. read Romans 16, because it gives us this sense that the church is so much more than what we often make of it. The church is not like what we see behind me, though I love our beautiful sanctuary, and it is genuinely beautiful. This is not the church. And the church in Rome was not this kind of institution that primarily had someone stand on a stage while everyone else sat in pews and just this content was kind of delivered to them. And it wasn't even primarily something like where we maybe think of the Roman church today, Roman Catholicism, where there's like a priest who's mediating this mass to the people, mediating the sacrifice of Christ and forgiveness of sins to the people. It wasn't even that. And we see this community of human beings. And fundamentally, that's what it is and what it was. That's what the church is. And I want us to just consider one section of this that I just found in that book that I mentioned by Andy Crouch is particularly powerful, where he talked about it. But this comes to us in Romans 16, verses 21 through 23. Paul writes, "Timothy, my fellow co-worker, sends you his greetings, as do Lucius, Jason, and Sosipater, my fellow Jews. I, Tertius, the one writing this letter for Paul, send my greetings too, as one of the Lord's followers. Gaius says hello to you. He is my host and also serves as host to the whole church. Erastus, the city treasurer, sends you his greetings, and so does our brother Quartus." And there we see just this wonderful description of the church in action. People from all different kinds of social stratospheres and different classes and economic backgrounds who are interacting with one another and who have collaborated to make this letter possible, to leave this lasting legacy for the church. Now, to be completely honest with you, I doubt that when they wrote this letter, when Paul dictated this letter to Tertius and Tertius wrote it down in Gaius' household, I doubt they had a sense that I would be here talking about it today on like a little tiny glass camera supercomputer that is broadcasting this out to people all over the world, that I'm writing from a continent that they probably didn't even know existed yet. Like, I doubt they could have grasped the magnitude of what they were doing. And yet somehow it did create shockwaves throughout the world and has done so for thousands of years. And I think some of the clues for this come to us in the names. And I'd just like you to hear this. I mean, we see here Timothy and his fellow Jewish co-workers who are laboring for the message of Jesus. We see that Tertius, the scribe, writes in his own hand a greeting to the churches in Rome. The name Tertius quite literally means number 3. Scribes in the Roman world were not particularly well thought of. They weren't highly regarded. They weren't even all that important. At best, he would have been a former slave who was freed, probably. We're not talking high social status here. And yet he is writing from the household of Gaius, someone with enough means and kind of a royal Roman name who can support this ongoing endeavor and provide hospitality to a lot of people. It says he is my host and also serves as host to the whole church here in the city of Corinth, where the Apostle Paul is writing from. Erastus, the city treasurer, sends his greetings, someone who is a public official. And then their brother Quartus. Where Tertius means number 3, Quartus means number 4. The picture that we see here, just ever so briefly, is of a community that does span all kinds of social classes, from slave all the way up to the highest classes in Roman society. And it was a community that was bound together in acknowledgement of their humility of their own inadequacy before the Lord and of his work in their lives that brought them together. So I just encourage you, maybe you've had a different or difficult experience with church, but I just want you to know that it's not about the quality of our programs or our experiences or anything else, but it is literally the presence of the Lord in our midst. And it is just trusting that as we lean together and we live with one another in faithfulness and in love and service to the Lord and to each other, that he will do more with our legacy than we could ever even begin to imagine. Again, I don't think they understood the magnitude of what they were doing. They probably knew it was important, but I don't know that they would have thought it would have touched as many lives as it did. And so I just encourage you, it's the little things that you do with other human beings in real relationship. They will make a difference that spans generations. So I pray and hope that that is something that you realize in your life. That's the essence of what it means to be the church. And I encourage you, if you don't have a connection to some kind of church community, I encourage you to get one. Because this isn't just about you, and it's not just about me, it's not about my own private spiritual relationship with God. It is about us and the new humanity that Jesus is building in his world. As iron sharpens iron, so one person sharpens another. We need each other to become the kind of people that God is creating us to be. So I hope this finds you well today. If you haven't subscribed to this channel, I invite you to do so. Like, comment. Thank you for those of you that do. Love to hear and read those. Reach out and let us know how we can help and serve you. Share this with a friend if you found it helpful today. Know that we're praying for you. God bless. Y'all take care. Have a great week. Make a great day. And we'll see you next time with something else away from the church. Going to be looking at prayer next. So excited to start that journey with you. Y'all take care. God bless.